Sifter for the ear.
News, interviews, reviews, cinema, TV, streaming. Action!
Hi all, this is Jerry Williams, aka TV Jerry. Film director Joe Carabeo has been on this show twice talking about his projects. His latest is Paul Pope THB, a documentary on the award-winning comic book artist and New York Times bestseller Paul Pope. I'll have a link on the webpage for this show at tvjerry.com.
All of the children could only work a very short number of hours a day, and they could not be near any form of smoke whatsoever. Whether it was real smoke, whether it was water-based fog, couldn't have them near anything.
That was today's guest, talking about one of the challenges of working with kids on his new project. David is a Richmond-based film production designer. He was Oscar nominated for News of the World in 2021, and we had a podcast about that experience. His latest project was for The Lost Bus, which stars Matthew McConaughey as a man who drove a bus full of school children through the horrific Camp Fire in 2018, the deadliest and most destructive fire in California history. There were unique challenges for this film, and David will talk about them today.
Sifter Review of the Week.
The Last Frontier on Apple. The opening scene starts with a riveting crash of a prison transport plane in the Barrens of Alaska. This unleashes all the violent inmates into the snowy wild, and the stories diverge into their various escapes, especially the mysterious former CIA agent played by Dominic Cooper. Jason Clarke is cast as the U.S. Marshal charged with tracking him down. The action sequences are well done and mildly violent, and that's the best aspect of the series. The personal interactions tend to drag the pace, but they're sufficiently involving to fill the time until the next big bad event. Clarke's character is more interesting in Hulu's Murdoch Death in the Family, which is now on Hulu, but he still manages to juggle the challenges effectively. The plot does wander around, with inevitable betrayals and revelations, but it's still worth a watch, especially for the riveting moments of action. I gave The Last Frontier 4 out of 5 stars. So, David Crank, welcome back to Sifter. It's been a couple of years, and so we have some things to catch up on. First of all, I didn't ask you last time, and I always wondered, Crank, that's an interesting last name, and a lot of times our ancestors did something and that became the name. Did your ancestors run cranks or something, or do you know where Crank came from?
It's English. Now, I don't know whether they did anything bad to get that name. I've read two things, that it comes from a bend in a river, a crank.
Oh, okay.
And it could have been someone who lived there. Also, the other thing was it meant someone who went against the tide of things.
Oh, okay.
There used to be a famous health food restaurant in London called Cranks, and it was one of the first health food restaurants. And that's the reason they called it Cranks, was because, nobody's name was Crank, but it was because it was something new that nobody else was doing. So.
Interesting. The last time we were not the last time we talked, but the last time on the podcast was March 22. What have you been up to since then?
Well, The Lost Bus is about it. It's been very, very slow 3 years, but that was a big chunk of time.
Well, and it's interesting because I remember in the last podcast you said, what are you up to next? And you said, well, Paul had a movie and it starts in May and I can't do it because I don't have time. But I didn't see him doing another film. Did he just wait for you, or did things worked out?
That would be very kind, but it wasn't. I think actually he's making that movie now.
Footnote.
Paul is director Paul Greengrass, who also directed News of the World, which David designed. He's also known for several of the Jason Bourne films.
He's making it in Hungary. It was a drama about Robin Hood, actually. About the beginning was a Robin Hood. It was an interesting script, but that's the one he had sent me, and then all of a sudden it just flipped and it became The Lost Bus.
Oh, cool.
Which was another project. He's got like a whole slew of projects he works on all the time. So I started The Lost Bus in 2023 in the summer, and then we started filming it spring of 24.
Obviously, you did News of the World with him,
yes,
which was Oscar nominated. Congratulations. So how did he pitch this one to you?
It was funny because it came up so fast. It was like I thought we were doing the other one.
Yeah.
Then that one disappeared, and then all of a sudden this one happens. It's taken from a piece of a book that was about the fires in Paradise, California. And this was one of the people she followed during the day of the fire. She followed about 5 or 6 people. So this was one story that was in her book. They referred to it as a lost bus because there was no communications in the town and nobody knew where the bus was.
Right. So what is your relationship with him? Obviously, it must be pretty good because you worked on a couple films with him. And how did you get started with Paul?
I got a call through my agent about News of the World, and I met him on Zoom. No, I get along very well with him. He's a very nice man. He's a really good storyteller. He's very clear with what he wants. So, I mean, he's able to explain quite quickly what he wants. But he also, at the same time, he doesn't give you a lot of information because he just wants you to do what you're supposed to do. So,
Yeah, right.
which is a very nice feeling. He also he comes from the world of documentaries. So he doesn't want to overtalk things with you beforehand. Kind of once you learn what he likes and what he kind of needs for scenes, you're able to kind of figure it out. And he likes to kind of discover it that morning. I mean, you have discussed it. It's not totally
Sure. Yeah.
Surprise guest drop in.
Obviously, we want to take a trip on the Lost Bus, but before we do, just like last time, somebody stopped in to surprise you. And it's not Jack Fisk this time.
Charlie C.
Hey, David.
He's a man who makes many nice dinners for me.
It does. Oh, great, great.
Footnote.
Charlie Caldwell was the resident scenic designer and associate artistic director at Theater Virginia and the Alabama Shakespeare Festival. He's currently designer emeritus for the Richmond Ballet and McAlpine Architecture. So how do you know each other?
So David and I have known each other since 1982. He came to the Virginia Museum Theater, which was shortly to become Theater Virginia, as the assistant designer, and I was the resident scenic designer.
Footnote.
Virginia Museum Theater was housed in the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts, and it later became Theater Virginia before closing in 2002.
And what I quickly learned was that anything I gave David to do was done better than if I did it myself. So I gave David a lot of things to do. Because my work looked a lot better. And then after we worked together at Theater Virginia, David went to Alabama Shakespeare as their designer for one season or two?
I was there kind of 2 or 3 years and then kind of sporadically.
Yeah. And then I became the resident designer at Alabama Shakespeare and hired David back as often as I could because he was certainly the best scenic designer we had. And he was right at the very top of the best costume designers we had. And so he was a double threat when you could get him, because at that point his film career was taking off. And so that's how long we've known each other. And then I came back to Richmond in 2018. And so we've been able to be close neighbors practically since then. So it's been great.
So you got some good stories about David?
You know, one of the things that I've admired about David and about his work is his ability to deal with what I think of as difficult personalities or directors or actors or whatever it is that seem to me to be unreasonable.
In theater? There are those people in theater? I've never heard of such
those people, Jerry. I know it's a big surprise to you.
Really?
And you remember the production of A Christmas Memory did, the Truman Capote story with them. And Sook and Buddy are bringing things in, from the woods in their baby carriage. And then they go out to get a Christmas tree. And the director keeps asking for something more, something different. Can you remember that story?
Don't. Sounds good, though. I remember the play.
Well, I will tell the story. So, okay. So, here they are. They've got the baby carriage and they're a kid and an old lady. And they're going out to the woods to bring in a Christmas tree. So David supplies them with an appropriately sized tree that you might be able to bring home in a baby carriage. It's maybe 3'6" at the max, right? So they get to first tech rehearsal and in they come with the tree. And the director says to him, "Tree needs to be bigger." He says, "Oh, okay." So the next night they show up with a tree that's maybe a 6-foot tree, beginning to strain plausibility, but it's a possibility that they might be able to drag this in. Tree comes in, and I think the tree kind of falls in the door ahead of him. And the director turns to David and says, "Tree not big enough."
Oh, Lord.
And so I think it turns out there's something like a 16-foot tree that they finally end up with after the 4th try. And it's like Paul Bunyan has come in and this tree kind of plunk into the middle of the set. And the director goes, "Oh, I see. Okay, tree too big." He didn't say, "No, we can't possibly do that. That's stupid." He said, "Well, let's see what we can do." And just let it run as long as it need to run. You don't have to say no. They figure it out themselves. That is the mark for me of an artist who is really secure in his ability to come up with creative solutions. The other thing that I admire about his work is his relationship to details. And I would be tempted to say, it's very detailed, but actually it's the knowledge of when the details are important. If we were dressing a set, I would do the first pass on it. And, if the fireplace was there, you got the candlesticks and got the clock on the mantelpiece and got the picture over the mantelpiece. It looked fine, but it wasn't really full. And I would say, okay, David, it's your turn. And David would come in, and before I knew it, there were like invitations to dinner parties that are on the mantle, and there are some postcards that people have sent them from Paris tucked into the picture frame. And there are all of these very small but very textural things that make it feel real. There is one other David story, which I just love. And I hope you can remember to do this one, David. It's the story of David and Maria Bjornson, who was the designer of Phantom of the Opera. David and Maria Bjornson go to a party at Andrew Lloyd Webber's house.
She said we were going to go to this party, and I didn't really know where it was at first. And then she said it was at Andrew Lloyd Webber's house, which was quite a nice house. We were kind of late, and we thought it was a big party. And it turned out it was a very small party.
Oh, dear.
We were late. But before we went in, she asked the butler if we could look at the downstairs first before we went upstairs to the party. So we kind of went in the dining room, and she inspected all the paintings all the way around. She was a wonderful person. She was funny. She was also kind of a grande dame. And so she kind of carried this off quite well. And then we went up and discovered there weren't many people, and they were all kind of waiting for us. It was a little embarrassing. And then we were all kind of famous people, and I was kind of like the person who didn't know anybody. And I think they all kept looking at me thinking, am I supposed to know him? I was like, no.
Or is he Maria's boyfriend? Or
I know.
Right.
The dining room was hung completely in pre-Raphaelite paintings. It was kind of a spectacular dining room.
Yeah. Charlie, thank you so much for dropping in. I'm sure it was a great surprise for David.
It was fun to be invited, Jerry. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you later.
Let's switch now and get onto the Lost Bus here and talk about that. Now, of course, a lot of that movie was exteriors and the fires, of course. So how does a production designer design exteriors? Of course, you had to do it some in News of the World, too, but this is a little different because it's woods, mostly.
It was odd. I mean, because it was in New Mexico, around Santa Fe. You can't burn anything. They won't even let you really build a set and burn it. This was decided, early on, it had to be dealt with this way. We had fire bars, which would put the correct reflection on people's faces.
Footnote.
Almost all of the fire you see, I'd say 99% of the fire, is all computer generated.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because you couldn't do it any other way. I mean, it was you try to set a piece on fire, and the whole state might have been on fire in a few minutes. Didn't want that on our heads.
Pretty dry state, yeah.
We used one town in the very southeastern part of New Mexico. It's way up in the mountains. It's actually kind of north of El Paso. And it, oddly enough, looked very much like the real town of Paradise, which is in Northern California. So we used that for the pre-fire shots when he's driving around and picking the kids up and stuff. There was a camp kind of near Santa Fe that we used some of the roads in, and his house, the interior was there. We built the exterior of his house up, and they had a road that went up into the hills. But the bulk of the film was really done on, I stupidly can't remember the name of the little studio we used, but it's kind of in the middle of Santa Fe, and it's got two film stages that were underwritten by Greer Garson.
Oh, cool.
So they're the Greer Garson
stages. Been there a while then, I guess.
Yeah. We did build some things. We made a trailer park that you barely saw. We did build a facade of a school that burned. You can't see much of that. But
and then there was some interior of a school. I guess that was a real school.
That was a real school that's now kind of an adventure camp run by the Presbyterian Church or something like that.
Okay.
Called Glorietta. There was a Civil War battle there. That was a piece of a school that had originally been a school. Was a store. That room where they go into in the school, it was a store. We had to clear it all out and kind of remake it. So it was an odd movie in a way for me. It was one like I had never really done before.
Well, now, what about the bus itself? Was that on a soundstage and you had a breakaway bus, or did you shoot in a real bus?
It was a mix. We had 6 buses.
Wow.
And actually, we had 7, and 1 was for parts. We had to keep them all running. They all had different uses,
right?
And I can't quite remember what they all were. They were ones that were on stage. Often those you have to empty the gas out, all of them, and things like that could be on stage. All of the children could only work a very short number of hours a day.
Sure, yeah.
And they could not be near any form of smoke whatsoever, whether it was real smoke, whether it was water-based fog. Couldn't have them near anything. Matthew actually drove the bus a lot. He took classes and drove a school bus. But when you see him driving, it's all exterior. But everything with the children was in a studio. So all of that stuff through the windows was all computer added. It was kind of amazing.
And so none of them were breakaways.
The thing with that is you kind of like to be confined by what the bus is. And if you start like taking walls off, then cameras get in weird places. And it's like, well, how did they film that? Because where's the camera? You know, we do things like the windshields come out.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing a shot on him, they want a clear shot and they add the reflections all back in. So in the end, you just shoot it the way it is. It ends up being better looking. Plus, they couldn't really wait to be taking the side of a bus off, and because you only had the kids like 4 hours or something.
In the last interview, you said Julianne Moore smiled at me. Did you get any interaction with America Ferrera or with Matthew McConaughey at all, or were they just said hello and that was it?
I don't know that I ever spoke to America Ferrera. I showed Matthew McConaughey where the bathroom was. He asked me one time, they had him driving. This really made me angry because they wanted him to drive the bus. He had to bust through a fence. And we had it prepped. But he came and he asked me, he said, what's behind that fence? And I said, no one's told you what's behind that fence. I got angry at the special effects. I said, you got to go over there and look at it. And you got to walk him through it. I said, no, I could be responsible for him driving through a fence when he has no idea what's on the other side.
Yeah, really.
It went really pretty smoothly. We did change a lot, but I never heard anything bad about any of the actors. And you always hear that first on a crew. They'll tell you if people are being, both of them were, I think, incredibly nice and really hard workers. The people I dealt with most were the actual real people we brought down from Paradise. Our main consultant, which we worked with a lot, was a man named John Messina. He's in the movie, but he was the actual guy who was running everything the day it happened. He was the man standing at the back of the truck. Yeah. In the movie, he's that man's assistant. It was funny when you'd get questions together and we'd talk to him on the phone and he would come for periods of time to work with us. It only took about 10 minutes. First of all, they just kind of gave you an answer. And then if you got them talking, it all poured out. Because it was just kind of, it was such a surreal day for all these people. He wasn't even supposed to be working. They thought it was a brush fire. And he said, well, I'll go in because the other guy was busy or something. And he said, and I was on call for 42 hours.
Wow.
I was standing at the back of that truck. He was the main guy we used. And he put me in touch with people from Paradise in different agencies who told me how things would have been set up. Like he went through it and showed us how the information center would have been worked. He worked with us on the maps to show us, because it's very specific how the maps are drawn. The real school bus driver came twice. A guy named Kevin, who was very nice. Actually, were two teachers on the bus. I don't know if she was a teacher's aide or just a young teacher, but they could just combined it into one person. So Mary, who was the older one, she came. I remember she told me, she said, the most amazing thing of that entire day is we were on that bus for 6.5 hours and not one child asked to go to the bathroom. And I realized halfway through, and I thought, I'm not bringing it up because I won't go. They worked with us, and they're the ones they were really enjoyable. And the lady in the call center at the computer, she was a lady who was actually there that day doing it. They gave you all of the really interesting little things that you would never have found out, what actually happened. I mean, she told me she had been there in the morning and she left to go evacuate her father. They lived in the next town near us. So they actually never got encroached, but they didn't know whether they would be. And when she came back, her normal spot had been filled by somebody else, which was kind of directing all the firemen where to go.
Right.
She had to take all the phone calls from the people who were stuck in their houses.
Oh, wow.
Which was horrifying. She almost didn't do it. She said, I don't know if I can live through this again to do it. But she did come, and she was there for like 2 days, and she did a beautiful job. But it's all just a 1/16 of an inch beneath their skin if you start talking to them.
Yeah.
The father came and he was in the art department with us, and he had his real son was with him, who was about 16. And he was telling us what happened, kind of taking us through the day. And then all of a sudden he said, well, I need to run to the restroom. So he told his son, he said, you finish telling him what happened. And I was standing next to him, the son, and I thought, oh, poor kid. I mean, he's 16. You don't even want anybody looking at you when you're 16, much less have to do a whole story. He and his grandmother were taken out by one of the neighbors or something. They got out, but he got all the way to the very end and he burst into tears. And it was just like, wow, it's like, is that real for you 5 years later?
Yeah.
There were 10 of us watching, and I said, you were lucky you got to Bottom Hill and your father was there. And he said, yeah. It's weird. It's something that none of us can understand or even imagine. I mean, it burned the size of Atlanta in a day.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, those scenes in the movie where the wind is blowing and the fire's leaping across the forest, it really is incredible. It's really
Well,
terrifying.
it was blowing pieces of trees like a mile ahead that were on fire.
Yeah.
And they
Wow.
said when the fire started, it was like the perfect situation. It started in that kind of canyon, and it says the fire starts and it heats the whole hill up ahead of it.
Yeah.
So by the time the fire reaches, it's like perfect tinder. It's all hot. It was burning a football field a minute at the beginning.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
One quick story that this lady told me when I was in Paradise. I stayed for an extra afternoon by myself. So I was driving around and I went in, there was an antique store, but it didn't have anything left around it. And I went in and it was an older lady in there and I was talking to her. I said, "How did you survive?" And she said, "Well, we had a parking lot around us. So the fire jumped us." And she said, "And I had a building a block down on the other side, but it had a cement front." But she said, "But then 3 hours later, it burned up the backside of the hill and burned the entire building down." And she said, it was a warehouse for her. And she said, all in all, it wasn't really a good day.
Well, yeah. Minimal, yeah.
Doesn't sound like it was.
Yeah, really, that's crazy.
So each of them, I guess, process it a different way.
Yeah.
It's, it was kind of like the perfect storm. It was caused by the power line and it was bad maintenance, but anything could have started that fire. And if it started and went, there was no stopping it. Part of it is people living in areas that are probably not correct to be living in.
Right.
I think I read somewhere that there was like 1,600 miles of lines. All those lines came down the mountains and they fed the power to San Francisco. And they're up across canyon hills. There's no way to even get to them.
Yeah.
Hadn't rained for 6 months.
Yeah.
60-mile-an-hour winds. The fact that they got 30,000 people out and only lost 85 people or 84, I think it was, is rather amazing.
So is there a type of project that you've never had a chance to work on? I know you've done these big Westerns and these big productions. Is there anything you've thought, well, this would be kind of a different project?
I don't ever think about it in terms of what the style is or what, period or whatever. It's just really is like, is it an interesting story? And can the director tell you in an interesting way what he wants to do with it? If they can do that, then you think, okay, we're okay, because this person kind of knows. I'm supposed to do, if it all kind of goes through, a film start in Puerto Rico, starting probably in January full time. And it's set at the end of the Spanish-American War. And when I was sent the script, I remember thinking, oh, thank heavens, it's like something I've never done before.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about this thing at all. And it's proved to be quite interesting because I really didn't know. But it's with a group of people who are incredible. It's being directed by an incredibly successful, famous rap star.
Who's that?
Not Bad Bunny, but
No.
guy named Residente. I mean,
Okay.
he performs under Residente. It's not his real name. But Bad Bunny's going to be in it, I think. I did meet Bad Bunny. I have to say, I didn't realize who he was.
No, that's probably good. People like that when they just treat them like a regular person.
I know. He said, "Hi, I'm Benito." And I shook his hand. I said, "Hi, how are you? I'm David." And then the director looked at me and goes, "This is Bad Bunny." And I heard myself say in the middle of the archives, which is all very quiet, I said, "You're Bad Bunny?" And I decided I was just going to shut up because I was a very uncool person. So he was a very nice guy.
One question I always like to ask, what are you watching right now? What have you seen lately on streaming or in the theater?
I'm terrible because I don't watch anything. I think I'm like the shoemaker's child or something.
Right. Okay.
I'm reading artist biographies right now. That's been my most recent thing. I find it very interesting to read like 4 of them because it takes 4 biographies before you start to understand what the person really was.
Oh, you mean 4 of the same person?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's fascinating because each one is like about a totally different person. It's interesting to do that. So I've done that with John Singer Sargent and Georgia O'Keeffe, and it takes 4 of them before it's like, okay, now I kind of have an understanding of what this person was. The first one gives you one piece of who they are. I'm sure other people think it's terribly boring, but I find it quite fascinating.
Oh, that's great. Actually, it's interesting. I did do an interview with filmmakers of a documentary on Georgia O'Keeffe, which was wonderful.
That was very good. I saw that last year in Charlottesville.
I thought you were going to say that was a very good interview.
No, I didn't. I wish I heard it. I didn't know you did it.
It's a fascinating interview, too, so I think you would enjoy it. I'll try to remember to send you that link.
Okay.
All right, David. Well, this is great again. It was fun to talk to you and to hear all that amazing stuff about that incredible movie. It really is a riveting film.
I think it does well, I hope.
Too bad it didn't play theaters longer, but that's the modern world,
that's
unfortunately.
the modern way of doing it.
Yeah.
And I don't think they worry too much about it because they already have a built-in audience to watch it. So the publicity was very
Minimal.
minimal. I think it doesn't matter. So somebody asked me, did you see everything you did? And I said, well, I saw it all. It was kind of a blur in the background, and it wasn't always in the same order that I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
But it was fine. I think it did what it was supposed to do. And that's really, there are movies that are like that. It's not about the scenery at all.
Yeah. Well, David, thank you so much for this. It was wonderful again.
You're welcome.
And hopefully we'll talk in another 2 or 3 years when you have this Puerto Rican movie to talk about.
I know. Hopefully it happens. It will be.
Okie dokie. Thank you.
Okay. Take care.
That was Richmond-based production designer David Crank talking about his latest project, The Lost Bus, which stars Matthew McConaughey as a bus driver who got a bus full of school kids through the horrific campfire in 2018. I'll have a link to David's website and more on the webpage for the show at tvjerry.com.
Coming soon. In theaters.
Wicked for Good. The long-anticipated second half of this blockbuster film arrives. Rental Family. An American actor in Tokyo, Brendan Fraser, lands an unusual gig, playing stand-in roles as a relative for strangers. Jay Kelly. George Clooney plays the titular character, a famous movie star who confronts his past and present, from director Noah Baumbach, and also starring Adam Sandler and Ilsa Fisher. Sisu, Road to Revenge. After killing occupying Nazis in Finland in the first movie, the hero returns to his family's house, but a Red Army commander tracks him down. Sentimental Value. This Norwegian import is an exploration of family, memories, and the power of art. Additional films are opening for Thanksgiving on the 26th. Zootopia 2. This animated sequel has the animal cops back to crack a new case. Eternity. In the afterlife, Elizabeth Olsen has 1 week to decide who to spend eternity with. The man she spent her life with, Miles Teller, or her first love, who died young, Callum Turner. Wake Up, Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery. Daniel Craig returns to crack a new case, again directed by Rian Johnson, with a cast that includes Glenn Close, Josh O'Connor, and Jeremy Renner.
TV and streaming.
One Shot with Ed Sheeran, a music experience on Netflix. Ed Sheeran performs his hits in one continuous take while walking New York City streets, riding subways, and meeting fans. The Family Plan 2 on Apple. Mark Wahlberg returns as a former government operative on the run with his family, which ends in a showdown in Las Vegas. The Ugly Stepsister on Hulu. An adult reimagining of Cinderella that's also a critique of the extents a woman will go to win a prince. Train Dreams on Netflix. Based on Dennis Johnson's novella, this portrait of a railroad worker leads a life of unexpected depth and beauty in rapidly changing America of the early 20th century, with Joel Edgerton, Clifton Collins Jr., and Felicity Jones. Jingle Bell Heist on Netflix. Two strangers team up to rob one of New York City's most famous department stores, and they fall in love. Chris Hemsworth, A Road to Remember on Nat Geo and Disney Plus and Hulu. Hemsworth helps his father Craig, diagnosed with Alzheimer's, by taking him on a memory-filled road trip across Australia. The Beatles anthology on Disney. This 8-part docuseries was originally shown in 1995 with rare performances and interviews. Peter Jackson, who did the popular Get Back, will include a new 9th episode when McCartney, Harrison, and Starr reunited to work on this project. Everybody Loves Raymond 30th Anniversary Reunion on CBS and Paramount Plus, featuring cast interviews and rare outtakes from this popular series. Next week, meet Melissa Chase and Amy Carter, who are the co-hosts of the new WRIC series called Showcase. This is Jerry Williams. Thanks for listening.
For more Sister, including literally thousands of reviews,
Visit tvjerry.com.
That's a wrap.